It is without a doubt that this is the matchup we've all been waiting for, and he's already up to no good. As expected, it's in his blood, it's in his history as Terran. To the top right, we have the red Maru. His opponent to the bottom left, the blue Zerg Dark. And it is inarguable to me to say anything other than that these are some of the best players of their respective races in one of the most competitive, most prestigious regions of the world. I can't believe that we're lucky enough to get to cast this, but I'm so excited for the ride that we're about to field report in on. Now, Maru has kind of set the standard for me in alternate ways to play Terran. You see a double Rax coming down, and this isn't that alarming. In fact, with Maru, it's almost surely to be expected, and I'd be shocked if Dark was surprised by this. In fact, you can see his first Overlord is not on an intercept path to go across the map as fast as possible. It is veering off a little bit in hopes of catching this proxy. Now, this might just be barely out of his vision. It is. Oh, no, it is. So that Overlord's going to go across the field without realizing this is right here. But where Maru started revolutionizing the way I think Terran plays, to me, is not just a 2 Rax or a 3 Rax. God knows any random Diamond Andy can pull that off. But Maru uses these in kind of like an opener rather than an all-in, and then usually plays out of it. And that's where I've been really impressed by his play over time. But of course, if this does enough damage, anything can come in, I'll become an all-in. We'll see how it plays. So the first SCVs are going to head out. They could probably sneak a bunker in. Well, it won't be that sneaky. The Overlord's going to see it. Drones will get pulled. And then this is where it gets a little awkward, because this should be staved off and not do that much damage, especially once the drones come in. That hatch rate was loud. Oh my God. There is no stating how seriously Dark is taking this. Almost every single drone from the main was brought here. The mineral walks through to get a surround on the Marines, holds them in place, goes for the kill. Loses drones in the process, but stops the Marines from reaching the potential bunker. The bunker itself is stopped. The SCV has gone down. And frankly, this has gone pretty terribly for Maru in terms of the attack. But as I had mentioned before, this isn't always an all-in. For Maru, it's more of an opener. Back at home, he's got a factory building in the wall. And with a full wall and no layer, there's no real danger of like Zerglings getting Overlord dropped in the main anytime soon. So while this is very unfortunate for Dark, excuse me, for Maru, this was really fortunate for Dark. He got on top of this very quickly with a very fast response. Meanwhile, though, you can see that spike is when the drones had to be pulled off mining to deal with this. And he's not out of the water yet. As long as there's Marines out here to threaten him, Dark doesn't know when this is over until he sees the barracks floating. One across the map to scout and one likely to go home and produce stuff with. In fact, Maru's feeling so happy about this opening in terms of like what he has left on the field, he just thinks a command center on location. Because the reality is, Dark cannot send links across the map to kill that SCV as you conventionally might. Because A, the barracks would see them over here, and B, the Marines catch them over here. This is actually really well done. And this Marine should be able to run to the reinforcements, and if he does, oh, he might save the Marine. Realizing what the situation is, though, Dark withdraws. It would have been so easy to commit for a Marine kill, and if he did, he'd lose everything for it. So as these Marines walk back home, yes, there's a small amount of danger where these two links might kill the SCV building the command center. Unlikely. But even if that were the case, the Marines will be home in time to stop them. Oh, this is bloody clever. So normally what Terran players do is they use one of their barracks to scout the main base, and it floats around like an Overlord. Maru instead lands it at the third, blocks the third base, denying Dark a significant amount of time building this hatchery up. I mean, that hatchery, that's larva, that's creep spread, it's production, and it's all been delayed thanks to this barracks, which is, yeah, gonna die, but I think it was meant to. Back at home, Maru's no stranger to swapping things up, and he's going for a fusion core. Now look, the patch hit, and there's a lot of little things that could go over for Terran. My best recommendation would be to check out the patch notes yourself. I think the only thing we're going to see really make a big effect on this matchup, though, is the Widowmine change. So before we get to that point, just letting you guys know that Widowmines no longer need drilling claws to remain stealth while burrowed after firing their shot. Now, all you need to do is have an armory. You don't have to research anything. If you have an armory, Widowmines stay burrowed, and they stay undetected. But Drilling Claws still does what Drilling Claws does. And I don't know if this will come into effect, but it's worth noting now so we don't miss out on it later for the people who are uninformed. I also want to point out Maru has taken a very fast third CC. This is a great move because he's going to be so aggressive with his battle cruiser. It's unlikely Dark will have the freedom to punish him. I think it's fair to say some Zerg players used to, not so much anymore, but used to see this third CC and go, oh, time to all in, time to punish the heck out of this. That won't be the case here. Even if he does scout it, he won't have the freedom to, because that battle cruiser is going to be keeping Dark very busy across the field. And I guess the other change that's worth noting here is Queens did lose one range when fighting air units. Not ground units, mind you, only air units. So now they only have, what, 8 instead of 9, I think? Or excuse me, 7 instead of 8. Sorry, the Queens just have such like weird numbers. Is it 13? Who knows? You can tell sometimes. But in all seriousness, the battlecruiser is going to be a pretty big force to reckon with. You're going to have these Hellions as well, causing threats. And, well, maybe the light creep timbers get cleaned up a little bit differently. I don't think that'll be too much of the focus here. For Maru, I have to imagine it's about running in, frying up some drones, and then having the battlecruiser teleport elsewhere and cause some chaos. And are we getting servered on again already? Really? I'm going to just have to go back and do this all for YouTube all over again later? That's fine. Whatever. Yeah, my ping's not even that bad. I don't know why it causes this to happen. It is what it is. We'll muscle through it, and if it keeps happening, I'll dip out so I don't cause any problems. But it's worth noting that this usually doesn't affect the players. We've seen this so many times. So the problem is this has been going on for years. This is like an issue that Blizzard hasn't fixed. So unfortunate. But these stutters, like I said, they don't really affect the players. It's just the observer. I'll quit going on about it. It's just not really much else I can comment on for the time being. The mutas are an interesting change up for this. So the battlecruiser doesn't have teleport available. It should by the time the mutas are out. So I don't think there's any danger of this getting sniped off. Or at least there shouldn't be. But it's weird to see muta as the follow-up. Unless Dark was predicting mech. But it's not mech. And there's no lack of anti-air. There's going to be Marines. And Maru's got production at the wazoo right now. The key thing that I think he's missing is he doesn't really have a lot of them to fight with at the moment, and thus chasing mutas could be a problem. Oh god, he's got to be so careful. This battlecruiser really needed to teleport home. Yeah, get those repairs. I think as a consequence, he doesn't see the Spire at any point. Was never scouted. He didn't see the mutas at any point. So, oh no! Oh, look at Maru. He's just like immediately catches what's going on here. A small missed opportunity for Dark. That could have easily turned on one of the medevacs and sniped him off, but of course, Marines are up, missile turrets are down, and I don't think there's any big threat from these mutas, but it is worth noting that mutas, lings, banelings, they all complement each other really well. And what they're best at is not necessarily fighting on the front lines, but harassing and being frustrating like this. You know, grabbing the odd siege tank, picking off some of these Marines. It's not worth it to lose the mutas, but it's definitely worth it if he can get away even at just like 1 HP. So some mild, very frustrating harass. I love this skin on them. I think this is what, the Leviathan Brood or whatever. I think they look so cool. Baneling's speed finishing here shortly. There hasn't been a lot of creep cleanup this game. It's not been the emphasis of what this game's been so far. But it will be pretty easy to push this back once I think Maru starts getting into action. He's got 1-1 on his side for now. That's going to get, of course, tapered off as 1-1 is about halfway done for Dark. But those weapon upgrades are going to be a lot more valuable versus the Mutalisks than the Banelings per se. I think he'll deal with these one way or the other. It's all about just cleaning up this creep and creating some areas which he can fight that aren't too dangerous. Of course, this base is the rich gas, so he actually focuses down the extractor to make sure no more gas comes out of this. Picks up and starts withdrawing. This is what's so cool. There was no information on the map that told Maru he should fall back. He just instinctively knows that oh god. Did that just double kill the 2 medevacs? Both had tanks in it? Are you kidding me, Dark? Are you insane? Are you a god right now? But what I was saying was like Maru knew instinctively to pull back after that. And that is the mark of a real, that's like, I say this all the time. That's the difference between a good player and a great player. And Maru is without question a great player. Infestation pit starts up for Dark, and that'll be in a hive maybe soonish. But we got not 1, but 2 proxy hatcheries. Not proxy, excuse me, macro hatcheries. I got the Protoss series still in the brain. 2 macro hatcheries in the main. This is going to be for a lot of larvae. This tells me as well that this is likely going to be a more ling heavy game with banelings than necessarily ultras or broodlords or anything of the such. because he's just gonna have like unlimited larvae to work with. Now there are some banelings morphing into the top side. It's a few, it's not many. We have drilling claws coming up. This battlecruiser teleport barely gets off in the nick of time. That was clutch. That's pretty close. Marines right up here and target fire 2, almost 3 of the mutas. Okay, that's a nice pick off. That's a little bit of payback for the tanks earlier. But as this 4th CC starts moseying on over, he might just accidentally find out about this huge hit squad at the top. Dark, on the other hand, of course, is trying to keep Maru very preoccupied at home. You know, he'd much rather have him looking at the mutas than looking at this. This is a pretty big thing to catch. Drilling claws will be finishing shortly, so we'll have that fast burrow for the widow mines. This makes a lot of sense, of course, because widow mines and Thors are going to be able to both shoot up and down and help out for both cases, whereas tanks cannot help with the mutas at all. Thors aren't that great against the mutas anyways. Even if they super stack up, it takes so many shots from an unupgraded Thor to kill these. But the range and the damage should be enough to zone the mutas out and keep them from just freely flying in. I love that he like quadrupled up on the missile turrets too, and the sensor tower. This is some next level stuff out of Maru that I could dissect for a long time. But the TLDR, there's no way those mutas are going to catch him off guard the same way it does most people. This squad, by the way, has no medevac. There's no exit strategy. This is going for a kill. It gets the cancel, doesn't get the kill, goes for the second base, still no kill. But that hatchery's so low, by the time that thing finishes, it's going to be probably like 3/4 HP. While this goes on, of course, the medevac moves out. We've got an Ultralisk Cavern starting up for Dark. I mean, the Ultralisk Cavern makes a lot of sense if he's worried about widow mines, but widow mines are only part of the equation, of course. I don't know how much room Dark's gonna have in his budget for this either. Sitting on over 80 drones, his overall army supply is pretty low, and if he wants to make as many Zerglings and Banelings as I think he does, he's not gonna have a lot of room in his supply for Ultras. He'll have money. There's no question about the money game for Dark. We haven't gone over the income in some time, but Dark's been killing it. But this is where Terran plays patience. This is where Terran plays the late game, and it's about trading really efficiently now over the next like 12-20 minutes, because Maru's not going to have a money advantage. There's no way. It's just not the way this is designed. But what he can do is get ahead through cost-efficient engagements. This is not an example of one of those. God, he's got so many extra bases. Like I'm still pretty obsessed. Like this is, I love the double hatchery. He's got 87 larvae banked up. For those who don't follow the game too closely, or maybe you're part of the Stream Raider crew that's just hanging out, this is an insane amount of larvae to have in your back pocket. Nobody has that. You know, you remake your army as Zerg, it's off of 50 larvae, not 87. Widow Mines get some really good pop shots over there. This is not going to go so well. Buildings do not have building armor. The muta count is pretty big. But between the Thors and the battlecruiser, I guess it's going to zone him out. Oh god, the bus goes in. This is 40-something Banelings deep. No siege tanks, no widow mines to catch these. These split. Natural's lifted. Third base, unfortunately, sacrifices. Thor's going to do the best they can to hold. The mutas are still a big threat. Dark is just overwhelming Maru and overrunning his base, but he has not killed him. And in fact, to a degree, he may have done him a favor, because now Maru has significantly less SCVs. He doesn't need to rebuild 30 SCVs that he lost. He only needs to rebuild like 10 or 15. This now opens up a significant amount of supply that can be invested in army units, not like macro and SCVs. He's already got the macro established. That's where these extra mules and these bases are going to be really, really effective. But as we just witnessed, this many mutas is a problem. 22 mutas is not something you can really shrug off. You can't just build 4 turrets and it stops them. It's too many. Building armor would help with that a little bit, I suppose. But of course, the engineering base have been so preoccupied with weapon upgrades. And oh my god, that planetary fortress is super dead. But this was a very expensive trade for Dark. To kill that base and a siege tank, he sacrifices upwards of like 30 Banelings for it. And just to be clear, on the units lost tab, this only shows units that are straight up killed by Maru. It doesn't show Banelings that self-detonate and explode upon killing Marines. So this means Maru has killed 71 Banelings on top of the countless many more that have self-destructed by killing Terran units. This has been a very expensive game for both so far. Dark, though, not losing out on that cost efficiency trade. And frankly, Maru is in a lot of trouble right now. He's scrambling, as you can see, trying to get bases up, trying to get bases down, trying to get army chasing in the main, trying to deal with these mutas. He just can't keep up. There's too much all over the place. Orbitals are dying. Command center is going down, but he's not withdrawing with the main army to pull back. Well, he wasn't. Then he was as soon as I looked. Is that like a caster curse? He pushes and perseveres forward. Now, these Thors don't have weapon upgrades, so they can't two-volley down the mutas like you can in normal situations where you have mech. But they will still help do a lot of splash damage. Marines can finish things off. Oh my god, it's the classic Ultra Skin. I forgot how stupid this thing looks. Look at it. Look at his tiny little head. He's an itty bitty small head. But the Ultras go in head first, headstrong. Take on anyone. And Dark takes game number 1 from Maru. It's the second game in this best of 5. Spawning here to the lower right-hand side of the map. He's up 1-0. We have the blue Zerg, saturated a little funny. It is Dark. The color changes are made by the map. Just to be clear, this isn't like a setting on my end. It just looks weird because it's the map submarine. But top left, he went for some proxies in game 1. I don't think they did that bad, but it didn't work out for him in the end. And it is Maru. I think if there's one guy, though, you don't count out in a series until it's over, it's Maru. This guy's a pretty sick nerd baller, and he's a very high-ranking Terran. And while that first game may not have worked out for him, I can't wait to see what he does if his focus is on macro. Or 2-base all-ins, which are also... I want to see a little popular, but I feel like that's more amongst the European Terran. Regardless of whatever Maru's plan is, though, he's got to make sure he doesn't take too many big risks. You saw that last game. Honestly, Maru played it pretty perfectly for a long time, and Dark still got away with so much behind the scenes. So it's hatch, gas, and then pool. So it's a pretty nice opening here for Dark. Maru, I'm not sure if he'll rush out a 3rd CC again, but it's actually just going to comment on another baller Terran we've been seeing a lot of recently, at least a lot more than Maru, is Clem. And Clem has been pretty consistently doing 3 fast CCs in a lot of his games versus Zerg. And I know some of you out there are going to be the snooty snobs, the snooty tooties, and say, well, you can't compare Clem to Maru. I would argue you can, not because of the prowess or the prestige, but just because of the way Terran interacts with Zerg. And I think Terran macro is a lot harder to pull off than Zerg macro, but when they pull it off well, it really shows. And that's why I think players like Clem, who have very strong macro games and are very fast players, they like their 3rd CC builds. And I have to imagine Maru does too if he's given the opportunity, but I also know that Maru is like a 10 times more aggressive player than most average Terran, including people like Clem. So it's really hard to make that call with him. I would much more confidently talk about that if it was a few other players, but the Reaper gets in, kills the Zergling. That's actually a really good start. As many of you probably noticed over time, it's really difficult to get even one of these lings sniped off. But the idea isn't that you kill the Zergling. The idea is that you kill the creep tumor that the Queen puts down later. And killing the Zergling now just makes that a little bit easier. Well, I like that he's threatening the drone, but all of this is done, of course, while staying out of combat-ish. So his health regens. He knows approximately where the Queen is. Zoning this out comes another Queen. So it looks like Dark's gonna really keep this one back. Oh, just to watch the cliff. I was like, wait a minute, what's he doing over here? That's right, there's a Reaper cliff here. So he's got eyes on both. Now, back at home, it's not a fast 3rd command center, but instead a starport. We also have some Hellions on the way, and I have to imagine this starport is going to be swapped over to that tech lab. And whether it's going to be for Banshees or not remains to be seen. I truly think it's cool how Banshees have made such a comeback recently. They haven't received some incredible buff. They weren't nerfed or changed in any way. They've just been what they've been for some time. But more recently, we've seen Banshee play. However, that's not the case here. Maru's actually just gone straight to Stimpak, and he's building a Viking. I actually like the Viking a lot, but it's also worth noting there's not nearly as many Overlords out on the field nowadays. I think Zerg used to be pretty complacent about this, and then good old Pult came around with his single Viking and started killing like 7 Overlords in every game, and people stopped doing it. But jokes aside about who is the owner of that strategy, it still works. This kills the Overlord. This temporarily supply blocks Dark, and most notably denies some pretty significant scouting. Well, with Stim most of the way done, you should see that bio picking up. Right now, the production's kind of low, and frankly, he's going to need probably like even 3 or 4 more barracks before he can really get things humming. At the same time, for Dark, you know, he's got Roaches, he's got Ravagers. I don't think these are the units he intends to play the entire game with, but I've seen players make this work. TLO comes to mind. He's actually probably not super high up in the win percentage with this, but I've watched it overwhelm. I love this Viking skin, by the way. It looks so cool. Well, looks like there's no more drones coming out of Dark. So with that being said, Maru's in for the long haul, possibly. There's a wall-ish up. I say wall-ish because, of course, the depots are down, and I mean, there's a bunker kind of on the field. This isn't supposed to be hiding behind a wall. He knows the Ravagers is going to break these depots with corrosive biles, endlessly frustrating. So he attacks, he zones out, he buys some time, and now the tanks are set up, the bunker's full. Oh my god, the Zerglings got completely destroyed on the way in. They funneled into Hellion Fire. Huge misplay out of Dark. But he did kill the siege tank, all things considered, and most of this army in the front line, very low. Like, repairs are super necessary. Maru's also gonna get supply blocked off of this, and may even lose his +1. You see him pull all these SCVs because he knows he needs to keep this alive. Oh, that's a tough call to make, and it's very expensive. He runs in once more. Between the bunker and the Hellions, this has been mostly dealt with. The bunker continues to buy some precious time. And that engineering bay, I bet Maru's wishing it wasn't out on the front line right about now. Oh, I like the Viking poking out. Oh, man, that's a landing strip of corrosive biles, but sniping the overlords here is going to supply block Dark again, but also very importantly strip away any vision potential. Dark, of course, has gone back to droning, and he's going for a lair. I think he's planning to try and play out of this. All of this attack, though, I don't know. It didn't seem like a very effective attack. It didn't seem like a very strong all-in. I can't say Maru is particularly over-prepared. It's not like he had 3 bunkers and 7 tanks waiting. Just some, like, for example, the Lings funneling into that little choke really worked out well for Maru, like unbelievably so. See if this drop looks good too. These are 2 fully unloaded medevacs. These Marines have combat shields coming in about 10 seconds. And he focuses down this spawning pool. Okay, this is a little annoying, but because Dark's been going towards things like Roaches, it's not going to hurt him that badly. Of course, if he ever wants to build Banelings and Zerglings, he'll need to rebuild that spawning pool at some point. That Viking, by the way, is on 4 kills. 3 overlords in total have died. Cost efficiency riding very high from Maru right now, even though his income's a little bit slacking. But that's where you make up for, right? Like, okay, you mine less money than Zerg, but you take better trades every time you fight, then that's worth way more, in my opinion. I like the stuttering of the siege tanks too. If he puts them all up, they're just gonna get corrosive bile. He knows it too. Speaking of corrosive biles, oh my god, on that ramp! You just see a bunch of blood on the ground as a result of this poor Marine stuck in the back. The stutter is really risky. By going in like that, he doesn't know what Dark has. He's making an educated guess. And if it is just mostly Roaches, this is fine. But of course, it's Roaches backed by Ravagers and Queens. It's not as simple as that. Yeah, the corrosive biles on that ramp are really powerful. It keeps units from running down, but it also prevents them from running up. Back into safety. I do love the way he does this, though. You know, diving forward, he picks off a Ravager, picks off a Roach. You know, 2 units doesn't seem that worthwhile, but it's 2 units here, it's 2 units there. It all adds up over time. Oop. But yeah, while this goes on, Dark, of course, has swapped things up. We have a Nidus Worm, as some of you may have noticed in that production tab. However, there's a pretty limited area that can even be Nidused in the first place. You're going to see an Overseer sweep around the main and maybe look for a way to put it up here. A little bit of dead space in the main from Maru could be very problematic for him. But of course, he doesn't know what's going on. Up to this point, He's only seen this. He actually scans the army to confirm, picks up in those medevacs and falls back. But Dark's really aggressive with this, right? Like, he doesn't have a lot of tech behind it. You know, 1-1 and speed upgrades. I can't see Maru has a whole lot more, but things like siege tanks and 2-2 are going to really complement taking this army down. Now the corrosive biles launch, and he does pick off one of the siege tanks. Nidus Swarm towards the main base has already been scouted and found. That's been dealt with before it even went up. Maru saw it before I did. Guy's a god. Eagle Eye Maru is what they call him. They don't, but that's what I would call him. This Nidus Swarm is going to be very helpful. As you can see from the little white bar, there's quite a few units inside. So scans ahead, reinforcements walk forward. The Ravagers are on the front line, though. That's a bit of a problem. They're on the front line because they dived in deep for the siege tank, but Ravagers are really squishy, and the bio is like, yeah, please. Just be in range of our guns. I appreciate it. Thank you for the help. Wrapping around the right side, keeps this concave strong through these corrosive biles. Taps out. Maru takes game number 2. Tying things up now 1-1. Oh, it's this map. I'm very jaded about this map. We'll go over it in a moment. The map destination is Ice and Chrome. Memory leaks? Jokes about browsers? Whatever. The point is, spawning in the bottom left, we have the red Zerg player. It's Dark. And his opponent to the top right, the blue Terran, Maru. Now, I had the wrong voice settings on for that. We're just going to confidently pretend like that was on purpose and move on. But this is a really large map. It doesn't feel like this is a really large map, but this is a really large map. And from base to base, it's a pretty long distance. But in terms of the actual layout, right, you've got a pretty safe natural, and like most of the maps this season, your thirds and fourths are in pretty respectable locations. Also noting that the free Overlord scouting spot has been pushed back, as it has been with many of the others. Prior, you could set an Overlord usually around here and just see everything. Now it has to be fairly further back if it wants that safety. But of course, the map is so large it necessitates watchtowers, so there should be a little bit of scouting. I think, though, Dark did something appropriate, though, where he took a very weird Overlord scout as he looks for proxy racks. Stressing hardcore that Maru is the type of player to use proxy barracks as an opener rather than an all-in, so it's very expected that he would do this again in a series, even though the first one didn't go so well. But that just goes to the credit of Dark in his continuation to scout and be diligent, looking for possible threats. Also, I'm sure the bitrate isn't appreciating the snow, but I just want to say these snow particles look beautiful. I've never noticed before. Nice and winter wonderlandy in the middle of the map, I guess. The SCV scout, very important. So for those who don't know what just happened there, Maru comes across the map, a little bit fearful that there might be a roach all-in coming after the way the last game played, perhaps. So he pops in and he sees a hatchery. This is all he needed to see to know that there wasn't some one base roach timing coming or anything ridiculous and insane. No lings or anything. So he's good. He's good. He's seen the hatchery. He knows that this is looking like a normal opening at a Dark, even though this Reaper hasn't even been to the main and he hasn't seen anything. And that's where I talk about this a lot. Like, information is so key in StarCraft. We all know it. You know, it's cheating in video games, screening, whatever. In StarCraft 2, it's more valuable than ever because you've got these players who are in such a high tier level of play that they can see something like a hatchery and discern so much information from it based on timing and completion alone. I am still curious. This is a statement I brought up during some of the other comments I've been covering, or some of the other games I've been covering, but I am wondering if this new Overlord location being further back, making it, of course, much more difficult for Zerg players to scout, is going to necessitate earlier Overlord speeds or not. I think I wish that they would. Some of my favorite opener players from like previous years have involved people like Laser and a few others who are very adamant about scouting because they can do a lot with that information. But regardless, we haven't really seen that change, and this has been barely a week, so I don't know how much that's going to tweak. But it's without a doubt Zerg players are struggling to get the same scouting info that they've had in the past. Not as for free, I guess. But a Roach Warren back over here starts up, and I gotta be honest, I didn't like the Roach play. I know that it works. I've seen it work firsthand. I've covered games where it works firsthand, but at the end of the day, I'm not a fan of roaches because the win percentage of those on my stream is significantly lower than most just regular Zerg builds. So I don't look at this with confidence, but I look at this as more of a he's making this because he feels he needs to type situation. But if Dark is going to invest in roaches again, I'm just going to be shaking my head. I'll be SMH my head. Roaches for now is fine, but if he commits to them, that's the difference. Oh, we might actually be heading down that road. Drones are transferring over to the third. Gas has been taken plentifully. And while I can't say for sure that this is going to lead into a Nidus worm, this has all of the ingredients to build a cake made of Nidus worm. A bunker comes down at the front to be safe. There's that Banshee I kind of talked about a little bit in game one. No cloak for these gals. And no hyperflight rotors. So I guess purely just going to be some harass. But these might be able to catch some of the roaches on the way. All she has to do is scout them. There we go. And this pushing these off is really good. Now, it's worth noting, Dark, of course, wasn't super committing. I think his plan was get over here, morph in a few Ravagers, and use Corrosive Bile to leverage a building down or two. Not happening. Not with how quickly that was revealed with that Banshee. Now, of course, in the same string of events, Dark is aware there's Banshees. But he doesn't know how much Maru is or isn't investing into them. It's just 2 Banshees for now, so they can one-shot drones together. But there's no cloak, and there's no hyperflight rotors. It's very basic Banshees. Uh-oh. Creep Troopers getting cleaned up real lickety-split. Again, they're now light instead of armored. So it's only 5 shots from a Hellion to kill them instead of, I think, was it 8 before? I don't remember the exact number. They go down fast. These Banshees head towards the main base, but the Spore Crawler's been positioned a little bit on the side to try and catch them. I actually like that. That's it's like an alive Spore Crawler, except not a missile turret, I guess. I miss Alive, man. Alive and Keen were kind of like the Terran Bash Bros of Korea. And it was like the Banshees hit the main base, but with that Spore Crawler and these Queens on a quick response, Maru can't get much done. It's not worth sacrificing these Banshees for 4 drone kills, so I think pulling these back and doing this, for example, he's actually going to kill his hatchery if it doesn't get canceled. Kills the drone too. And these Banshees will have very little pushback for any creep tumors they can catch as well. So by no means was going for Banshees a waste. Oops, excuse me. By no means was going for Banshees considered a waste. It's just a little awkward that they don't get to be used for more. Of course, I got some mutas coming up, 7 of them on the way, +1 weapons as well. So we will be seeing Dark commit to this. Mutas did really well in the first game of this series, but that's only because he got them up to this critical mass. And there's this point where mutas just go from being annoying and mildly problematic to an actual force to be reckoned with, and that number is about 20 to 25. It depends on the Terran player more than the Zerg player, in my honest opinion. But once you've got about 20 plus mutas in play, you can fight Marines with them. You can harass missile turrets and dive on them. You don't have to be so conservative with your mutas if you're above 20. But it'll be a long time before we see those numbers. And of course, we got all the tech for Zerg coming up. So this is a really big advantage timing wise for Maru in terms of tech for this push. It's a disadvantage though, because he's not going to be able to stop these mutas at home very easily. This is going to be super frustrating. But I don't think pulling back's the right call. I think pushing through is. Remember, he's got 1-1, he's got combat shields, he's got stim, he's got everything he wants for this fight. Zerg have speed and that's it, and not even on the banelings. In fact, on creep, he kites the banelings and focuses them down, and this is such a massacre. This is a bloody massacre. Every drone here is super dead if they run up. The hatchery itself is getting focused. I kind of feel like he could have pushed through to the natural right away, but understandably so. He's fighting between 2 locations. Maru has to jump everywhere just to deal with these mutas, but the mutas are going down to the missile turrets, and Dark is going down to Maru's Marines. So while this might not be game over right now, this has done some significant damage to Dark. It stripped away his investment in that harassment. It stops some economy, and look at this follow-up push. 7k to 2.4. Maru takes game 3, and he makes it look so easy versus a player as good as Dark. That's the crazy thing to me. I don't think it's weird that Maru can beat Dark or Dark can beat Maru. I don't. It's when they do it so one-sidedly, you have to stop and go, wait, what? Ooh, I just realized we're on Golden Wall. This is my favorite map in the current map pool. And I'll go over why a little bit in a moment, but spawning here in the bottom left side of this map, we have the red Terran, Maru. And his opponent to the bottom right, the blue Zerg, Dark. Now this could be the end-all be-all decider. This wasn't some crazy big long League of an event. This was just simply to decide the last 2 spots of who gets to join the many talented players in DreamHack Masters with the ESL Pro Tournament. And while we know Trap has made it through the other best of 5, one of these 2 will be the last player to join that crew. And I gotta tell you, I'm really torn. Obviously, I'm Terran, and I'm super hyped for Maru anytime possible, especially because without Maru, you can't have a potential Serral versus Maru matchup on brackets. But in all seriousness, Dark's also such a phenomenal Zerg player. It would be criminal not to see him there. So it's so unfortunate that 2 such good players have to duke it out here for that last couple of spots. But it gives us some good StarCraft, so I'm not complaining. It's also a weird path with the SCV. I don't know if he was trying to mind game the Overlord positioning or not, but it's just a regular build for Maru back at home. But yeah, Golden Wall is, I love, this is such a cool fake out attempt. He really wants Dark to overreact. Dark pulling 3 drones is not overreacting. I like this a lot. I really do. He's gonna probably cancel this. But anyways, the reason I really enjoy this map is because this is the only map in the map pool where you can get locked in on a soft contain, borderline all-in situation and still macro out of it. Because let's say, hypothetically, Maru's going for a 2 base all-in push, right? He's got tanks over here, Marines over here. Dark can't push down his ramp, nor can Maru push up. And it should be a stalemate that favors the Terran because they'll just continue to expand. No. On this map, you have an exit strategy. You can open up the back door, and you can set up a 3rd base here and not be locked into 2 bases. Doesn't always play out like that, and frankly, a lot more of this map tends to be more about yin and yanging, who goes north and who goes south with their expansions. But I do love the potential, and I think if I wasn't so spoiled in the first week that this map came out, and we got some sick games, Thermal vs. Raynor comes to mind immediately. Some really just sick games on this map. I wouldn't be so in love with it. But I got to cast with Roddy. He provided me some early insight. I got to cast some really good players like Thermal Raynor, and I just fell in love with Golden Wall. Not to mention, there's gold bases, but that's honestly not even the appeal of this map. It's just part of the map. You know, we don't have Zerg players rushing out to take golds like you would on Habitation Station. You don't have Terran players lifting their command centers over or anything quite so funky. Although I kind of wish they would, because it would be cool and baller as hell. Where's my boy MMA at? Oh, that's right. He's not doing StarCraft anymore. Feels bad. Anyways, look, we're going to just keep watching things develop here. 3rd CC is nearly completed. I'm not sure if Maru is going to go north or south with these. But either way, the command center, of course, can fly to wherever it wants to. Starport's wrapped up too. And this, oh, the Reaper gets the creep tumor. Oh, wow. That was actually a big snipe. Not, oh my god, into the game big snipe, but that was a pretty big snipe because now 2 more creep tumors go down as Dark needs to connect this creep up to the 3rd base. He doesn't know whether there's an all-in coming. He doesn't know about the 3rd CC. He hasn't seen Jack squat. There's no scouting whatsoever until just now. So it's very important he was on top of making sure that this gets to connect these bases so he could defend it against an attack that may or may not have been coming. And in fact, he doesn't see the 3rd CC. Ooh, this is kind of a confusing scout. So Dark gets in there with the Overlord, and he gets some pretty critical information. He sees the tech lab spinning. It looks like a Banshee build. A Banshee build typically doesn't come with a 3rd CC, and more to the point, it's not even actually a Banshee build. He cancels Cloak. So everything Dark looks like right now is like, okay, I gotta get some Spore Cars down, I gotta get this layer finished up, I gotta get a Spire out ASAP, or it's gonna be a headache to deal with. Whereas Maru's just kind of like... He doesn't know that he's gotten away with this the way he has, but he has gotten away with this to an extent. And of course, the most important thing is now Terran production starts picking up. That Banshee floats on over. This just continues to feed into the information Dark has misread. But at the same time, it's not that big of a, like, you know, you're building spore crawlers anyways as Zerg. If you don't, you're foolish. If you're not, you're asking for Liberators to end your game. So it's not like he wouldn't have these precautions in play. It just kind of rushes them out a little bit sooner. And of course, if you're spending money on a spore crawler, you're not spending money on a 4th base. While this goes on, though, regardless of the Spire or not, I can't say Mutas have served Dark poorly in this series. Even just now in game 3 where he lost, I still think his Muta play wasn't too bad. I mean, there's some small timing things and attention span things, but I think Mutas, Banlings, and Lings are good, and frankly, just solid. And there's a reason Zerg players stick to these strategies, because they work. He's doing a really good job getting up here to zone out the Hellions. They barely get there in time too. This Banshee in the middle of the map can't do much, but what she can do is start cleaning up creep, mostly uncontested. I mean, even if all she does is join these Hellions, it's still just more damage than not. The gold base ends up being the 3rd base for Maru. I'm really jaded about this one. I think the 3rd base on this map is always a mistake, personally. It's just so easy to harass from the other side of the mineral line. Like you could have 2 Ravagers just sit here and police this, honestly. But I guess if Dark is too busy defending, he won't get to go across the map and be aggressive. Maru is starting to really push out, and this is a timing that's a little odd, right? There's no real missile turrets down. He's not prepared for these Mutas at all. But he also might not need to pull back, because Mutas, while they kill SCVs very quickly, they also do not kill buildings very quickly. And in a pinch, in a base race, Maru can maybe make something happen. Trades out like 4 Marines for a Muta, 7 SCVs too. Not exactly great, but not terrible either. Oh, look at that. Trying to stutter step under these. Chasing this is going to be a pain in the butt. A lot of these Marines too, every time they stim, it's going to be more damage. And at some point, if he's too low, Dark's going to be like, oh, cool. You're within like ricochet kill range. Now, while this game's been going on, we've had very spread out tech. I'm a bit jaded about this. The Spire goes to another similar cheeky spot in the main. You've got almost all the big tech buildings here towards the 3rd. And now Dark takes a 4th. While the layers in the main. I can't say I've seen a Zerg player spread out like this before. And frankly, as Maru's a very drop heavy player, I'm worried that, say, the 3rd base is going to get building sniped off, but that's not happening right now. Dark actually has map control at the moment. He's got really good creep spread. He's managed to keep Maru mostly at home. The Mutalisk aggression was fantastic, and so far, cost efficient. Sorry, I was trying to bring up the use. There we go. Yeah, only 2 Mutas have killed a tank, several Marines, several SCVs. And unfortunately, you can't even just put down like missile turrets. They don't cover it. They don't cover the spread. And the minerals you spend on missile turrets are always arguably better used as units. There's some very select situations where missile turrets are better, but for the most part, it is you want a lot of Marines, you want Thors, you want Widow Mines. You don't want to be wasting money on these stationary buildings, but if it gives you peace of mind and it can zone out the top half of your base, go for it. Build a Nathanius tier amount of missile turrets, and it could serve you well. And Maru's hoping that'll be the case here to do stop/deter the Mutas. The Marines almost catch these in a bit of a sandwich. He's been playing a lot of chase off of this map, but in doing so, you know, he's not been pushing forward. He's not been cleaning up creep, and more notably, he hasn't really like scouted much. Remember, Maru hasn't seen hardly anything since a long time ago. There's like the 4 or 5 minute mark in the game when he last got a scout. Yeah, super awkward. And Dark continues to expand. Maru's locked into 3 bases. Granted, one of them's a gold, but this kind of adrenaline surge for your economy is temporary, and as the minerals start dissipating, so will the army supply. You won't be able to reinforce as easily. And this army is not in a position where it can fly through to the main. If anything, to catch these Mutas, he may have to use a medevac boost to get there in time, but then also runs the risk of getting caught out by the Mutas with said medevacs. This is a tough situation for Maru. It really is. He's doing a really good job zoning these out, though. The threats... There's so many missile turrets here. But using the missile turrets to buy some time, he starts pushing into the creep and starts working on cleaning this up. This is something he needed to do some time ago. So with all this extra excess creep on the map, it's also dangerous because these units are in the open against speed banelings. And speed banelings on creep have absolutely zero chill. No chill whatsoever. They're just going to run over the Marines more often than not. And then when they die, he'll just replace them with even more. Oh, some of these mutas are really starting to get picked off, though. It was like 2 at last count. Now it's 9. And at 100 minerals, 100 gas a pop, these are not easily replaceable. Dark has a lot of minerals, but he doesn't have a lot of gas. So as the mutas get picked off, it's not maybe even something he'd replace. I mean, we're moving on to hive tech after all, but bursting on through. The mutas come back to try and help hold, but this was such a good fight for Maru. Holy sh**. Dude, Dark's army supply gets replaced with 98 Zerglings in the production tab, 100 Zerglings in the production tab, but I want to show you guys that drop off. Like right here, that steep little spike, that was such a good army trade. Now he's on creep, and this is so dangerous because there are a lot of banelings and he knows it. There's also mutas all over the place, and he doesn't know where he needs to be right now. But as he pushes forward, he is catching Dark without a lot of his production ready to go just yet. I got to double zoom out. It's the only way I can fit everything in here. I know it's a little blurry to do so. Sorry, guys. But the banelings roll in. The Thors helping zone out the mutas a little bit. The tanks don't get the job done. A lot of the banelings survive. Maru doesn't finish the hatch. Oh, my God. 14 HP. Oh my God, 14 HP. He had to get out of there with a medevacs. He's left with nothing. The retaliation is terrifying. There's no planetary to fall back to. He's got to lift those depots or the tank's going to get surrounded. Oh no. Is this where he falls apart? The counterattack out of Dark's too strong. We're going to game 5, baby. GG. But it is game number 5. This has gone the distance. And if this doesn't prove that these two guys are on equal skill level, I don't know what does. The back and forth nature of this has been fantastic. And of course, it's cool to see both players playing their very own, very unique style. So for the final time, to the bottom left, I present to you the blue Zerg player, Dark. And his opponent to the top right, the red Terran, it's Maru. I haven't seen the show. This is a little off topic. I apologize. I haven't seen the show in years, since I was a teenager, but there used to be a show on TV called Shaman King. A really bad anime, super early adaptation, early morning cartoon type thing. Anyways, recently they've announced that they're bringing it back, and I've been thinking a bit more recently. But still, regardless of that, every time I've ever seen Maru's name, and I'm probably remembering the quote from the show wrong, but there would be this thing where to summon the spirit, he'd be like, Amida Maru, into the sword. And every time I read Maru's name, I hear that little voice calling that out in the background just because of the middle part. But I love seeing Maru play. And unfortunately for me, a majority of the times I've seen Maru play have actually not been firsthand. As I mentioned before, he's pretty exclusive and he stays around things like GSL and doesn't often pop up in smaller cups. And frankly, players like him and Cyril and other greats, they kind of don't need the money, so they focus on their gameplay, and rather than grinding out $100 and giving away builds, they hide everything until it matters most for big events like, say, this. But I think what's really unique about Maru, as I continue to just nerd out over getting to see him firsthand here, is he's not really a player I think I would define by his build orders. Granted, you could, and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I wouldn't. I would really like everything I admire about Maru. So much has to do with his like reaction time, his ability to target fire, the decision making, like pulling back without seeing anything to pull back with, etc. And I love all these things about Maru. So whether he hides anything or reveals everything, either way, it's all out on the line now for this 5th and final game. Now we're gonna cut these Zerglings around a fair bit. Ooh. Am I getting servered on again? I'm getting Korean servered again by the looks of things. In the 5th game, because of course I would. It is kind of cool getting to see the queen stuck midair. You gotta give it a minute, guys. It'll settle. Just to be clear, We've had this happen for years. This is nothing new. I'm randomly spiking high ping on the Korean server, but in a weird exclusive me to the server kind of a way. To be clear, again, the players do not experience this kind of weird stutter lag. It is something to do with my connection to Blizzard, I guess. I don't know. We've had this happen on and off on the Korean server, and frankly, for a time, it's why I stopped doing Korean content. But this has already passed pretty quickly, so let's not dwell on it. I'm just saying, if it happens again, it shouldn't be a problem for the players, and if it is, obviously, I will not hesitate to Alt F4 out of the game. And it's happening again. Anyways, look, well, the stutters are here or not. It doesn't matter. We're still going to watch this develop. Stim pack's on the way. We've also got that Viking coming out, which should be able to snipe off an Overlord or two. I don't think Dark is necessarily the type of player who relies on a Nidus Worm build, but at the same time, if you can kill the Overlord early on and reduce the chance that he has vision to pull it off, so much the better. Oh, I'm glad to see we have a couple of weebs in the chat to join me with this one. Hi guys. All right, Zergling speed is finishing up shortly. I don't think there's a bunch of Zerglings ready to rush across the map, but what there are some roaches coming out. And this is something that Maru would like to scout, but because he's been kind of on the outskirts with these Hellions, he hasn't seen much of anything. You know, you see a third base, it doesn't mean a third base. A lot of the times you see a third base for Zerg, that's just larva, man. What's key is watching the production tab. And so far, up till now, Dark has not cut drones. It doesn't appear he's going for some attack. And these roaches, for now, appear to be just purely defensive. Couple Ravagers morph in, take some of these shots. You did just build 7 Overlords, though. And you typically do that if you're looking to make a lot of supply for a lot of units that you're about to stop making drones for. That is a lot of Overlords in the clearance tab. So is he gonna swap this into an attack? It's game 5, man. Like, the risk of an all-in this stage is quite high. Well, the front's cleared out. The roaches have been scouted by this Viking that's been just perusing the map. Sadly, there's been nothing for it to pick off and no kills on the Viking, but still, that's good. It means there's no Overlords on this side of the field to catch. Just kind of coming in here looking for some drone damage. There's not really a lot of openings for Maru right now, and that's to the credit of Dark. Between the odd Ravager here or there. Oh my god, these Ravagers look so cool. Sorry, I love the skin for them. I think it's the Leviathan one. Anyways, as he continues to just guard his bases, there's no openings for Maru to harass. But at the same time, Dark has been playing pretty much defensively, so he doesn't really have any kind of attack of his own going out, which also in turn lets Maru take his third CC mostly uncontested. Scan stop to clean up some of the creep tumors. Barely doesn't kill that one. Literally one. Double drops though, hitting into the main. But roaches are waiting. Spore crawlers are down, and Dark is just not showing any sign of weakness. No openings in his defenses, and nothing for Maru to exploit. So Maru is kind of relegated to cleaning up creep tumors through the middle of the map. This isn't bad, but this is definitely not what he'd like to be doing right now. Yeah, for sure would rather be killing some drones. So he manages to sneak all the way around. He's going to use these drops to distract the army and then go in with the Hellions. This will probably sacrifice the Hellions for as many drone kills as he can get. And Dark pulled immediately, so it doesn't look like he's even going to get that many drone kills. This was not worth it for Maru, but it was a risk worth taking, I feel. Meanwhile, these drops have since unloaded, topped off a bit, and the third base is on the way. I don't think either player is in a particularly better than the other situation, if I'm just being honest for a moment. But I definitely think that if Maru's not careful, Dark will overwhelm. There's a lot of roaches, and they're not necessarily that great of units, but when you look at the supply difference between the two of them right now, you can see how they can still be terrifying. But +1 weapons is huge. That's about to get nullified by the +1 armor. That being said, this army push, small yet powerful, with 33 Marines, but more notably 4 siege tanks. Wait, was that hatchery off? Was that hatchery off center? I don't think that was centered. Sorry, while this goes on, it looks like there's a roach counterattack as citizens' arrest is performed and the good citizens of Maru hold the base. The Marines, however, center into the main. He's target firing down the roaches. This is Maru's so baller. There's no like A move out of him. He's always targeting something. And with his concentrated focus fire, he kills more targets. And he falls back to the siege tanks, but what he needs to do is fall back, come home. That or force out a base trade, because one thing's for sure, what he has here right now, this won't stop the attack. Scoops up the tanks. These guys are questioning, like, do I go? Do I stay? Do we go? Maru's got to make his decision here very quickly. He abandons the base. He lifts the command center and he pulls out the SCVs. Rather than trying to defend a lost base, he pushes forward into Dark's side of the field, hoping to force Dark to come back home. And Dark is in the position where he needs to return. There's no banlings here, so the creep isn't as big of a deal, but it's still a pretty big deal. Tanks are set up on the back line, which would be exposed right now to Ravagers. Leaving them unsieged is probably for the best. Mobility is key, and he's going to lose one of the tanks, but this push was huge. This push saved his base back at home. So while he didn't massacre Dark, he gets back to mining. Now, of course, again, I'm going to swap out a bit of tug of war here, but I think that this is actually a pretty okay position, all things considered. That said, this time around, SCVs are totally going to die. Ugh. I might be able to lift up some of the command, one of these medevacs, I don't know, but 12 something of these go down. And while this happens, I do want to point out, if you look at the supplies at the bottom of the screen right now, it looks like Dark is insanely far ahead, like unstoppably far ahead. And in fact, with some of the income, I would agree with you. But I go back to the fact that a majority of this army is roaches. They are roaches. They are Ravagers. These are units that eat up a lot of supply, but are frankly pretty units as the late game's concerned. Early on like this, though, they have a fair bit of strength. So it's been okay for Dark to play like this up to this point. But yeah, banelings are going to be necessary. Fungal growths are going to be helpful. There's a lot that's coming that's going to make Dark's army better. But right now, roaches are kind of garbo. Look at this. Look at it. He's trying to kite back. It's just nothing. This is nothing. This is garbage. Roaches are no good. But fungal growths are going to be big. Fungal growths will prevent medevacs from picking units up. It'll slow them down enough that corrosive biles are more likely to hit. Frankly, it's old school. I'm talking like, we're talking Nerd Show versus beyond old school levels of play, but this works, and it doesn't work often in modern TvZ, but it does work from time to time. And this is a game where Dark has a lot of power. He might be able to pull this off. Oh, a little awkward there. Maru, though, is in a very precarious situation. He's building a 4th CC now. I don't know if he's in a position to take a 4th command center, frankly. But he's getting more production up, and that's what I like to see the most. That other factory is going to be huge. Tanks are going to be a big deal, especially if infestors start coming into play, because they're the only thing that's going to really zone them out. Not to mention, get big blasts off on top of the roaches where applicable. You know, this whole time, I've just been like astonished. There's been no breaks, like no break in the action. Anytime there's nothing going on, it's just because they're setting up for the next move already. The infestors are revealed through that scan. I'm pretty sure he saw those. That's going to be a free hatchery. Well, it wasn't free for Dark. Left side, another base getting sniped off. Marines focus fire into the hatchery. Yeah, he's going to lose some Marines, but he should be able to pick this off and pick most of these up. Counterattack gets stalled out near the 4th CC, which, by the way, is in danger. It needs to go. He actually needs this 4th CC really badly. So this not dying to the roaches is pretty critical. Granted, as a Terran player, you can't always lift the main in a pinch, but you'd rather have a freaking planetary fortress down, right? Infestors, not really a lot of power outside of the fungal growth. I mean, he could maybe fungal some SCVs. I'm not sure what he's setting up for attack-wise, but by having these out on the map, they do present different angles of attack, and he might be able to fungal growth a position he might not have otherwise been able to fungal. Regardless, the infestors do lurk from behind, and these subterranean terrors on Burrow. Fungals hit the army. Maru gets crushed on the front line, but he's got a lot of backline units. And remember, this army from Dark is roaches. They're not that powerful, all things considered. He's chasing back. The lag is no. Come on, man. Regardless of the lag, though, remember, the players don't feel it. It's just me. The tanks fire off a few more blasts. The roaches and ravagers end up not dying thanks to the blinding clouds out of those vipers, but Maru continues to spread those marauders to the back line, and these marauders with their 2-2 are chewing through most of the roaches. And even though marauders don't deal bonus damage to ravagers, ravagers just don't have that much HP, so they're gonna get sniped off if there's nothing in front of them to hold them in place. Surprise fungal growth, immediate target fire on the infestor. Oh, Maru's reaction time is actually insane right now. Resources lost, close to even on both sides of the equation, and frankly, this is a weird late game. Dark has now taken all those really, I wouldn't say cheap, but supply inefficient units. He's lost most of them, and now he's turning them into more supply efficient things. Zerglings becoming Banelings, Infestors, and Ultralisks. These are all things that'll help out greatly. However, Maru has not gotten stuck. He's not some old boomer who won't move forward in his ways. He has Liberators coming up next. And while Liberators, to be clear, are not like an end-all, be-all, they are going to be a challenge to get around. Oh, looks like some Banelings hit the third base. Sorry, I'm more focused on the army right now. Yeah, some Banelings, there's the residue. So 9 SCVs end up going down. But Maru's in 2 different locations, dancing the best of his capabilities. He's going to try and snipe another base. And as long as there's no infestors here to deny the pickup, this will be worth. He should get out of here with most of the units alive. Now, what I'm a little sad about is like this factory didn't end up getting used for tanks like he had set up. He's actually going for Widow Mines, which I don't actually dislike for this situation. Widow Mines can help deal with the Banelings that are going to be problematic. He'd go with the Zerglings that run by. But he still doesn't have a great answer for some of these techier things. Like there's no ghosts, there's no tanks. The Liberators are his only option for the time being, but Liberators are easily shot down from the sky by Ravagers. 3 Corrosive Biles is all it's going to take. Not to mention we still have these little lurking infestors just kind of creeping around the map. Now, if Maru's looking, he can see this. Like you can see the animation, but sometimes it's easier said to than seen. Is that? I don't know if I'm saying that right. What's the abandoned ship on that? Meanwhile, to the bottom right, another big attack goes in. Maru always hitting on 2 different sides, and his army is always a little bit weaker because of this, but it is the fact that Dark has to pull everything to deal with half of Maru's army that gives him the opportunity to gain stuff from this. Oh, those Banelings are looking good. We're not seeing much focus fire, sadly, but he does spread, and that social distancing in the top of the ramp keep most of these Marauders alive. And the Marauders are the powerhouse here. They are the mitochondria of this army. Another base finishes up. This is Broad Roach. Something was broed there. Maru gets his command center down. I want to point out that's an orbital, not a planetary. I thought we'd start seeing some more planetaries, but it came from the main, and that's why. Here comes some of those Widow Mines. Oh, oh. Now, those Widow Mines are pretty fantastic. I'm not going to argue against them in the slightest. Down here at the bottom right, parasitic bombs on top of the medevacs, getting these bad boys cooked up, and some are going to die. 2 are going to die. A little bit rough to see. But these Ultras don't have chitinous plating yet, and this is really noteworthy because for 10 more seconds, Marines can do damage to Ultras, whereas afterwards they pretty much won't be able to. The armory's done, so the Widow Mines are protected with that stealth. Fungal growth, however, reveals stealth units, but it doesn't last long enough. The Overseers come in, and the Widow Mines are finally being removed from play. Dark continues to push pressure on Maru to the top while losing ground down to the south. It's tough. He wants to snipe this base again, but I guarantee you he's so afraid of infestors right now. Fungal growths have been a huge problem for him. Corrosive Biles landing, and there's not enough medevacs here. This army, it doesn't have an escape plan. This is a suicide squad. He's targeting down the Ultra. Can he get it? Can he get it? Can he get it? One more shot. Oh, no, it's just barely not. While this goes on, attack to the south is pushed off. Excuse me, attack to the north is pushed off as Maru responds up here. And like, these guys are playing out of their mind. This is incredible. Look at the resources lost right now. This is still going well-ish for Maru. But at any point, he could get crushed if he makes a mistake. If he walks into units like this. Ah! But okay. Up double the army supply. This is his best moment. This is his time to shine. Dark is struggling to recover both combination of larva and minerals. His income is, no longer supporting his army. And it is slowly, over time, started favoring Maru. And that's where those base snipes, I think, were very valuable. Sure, he's losing medevacs and marauders, and it's not a one-to-one trade, but it is something that was stopping and destroying the economy subtly while this was going on, because the main base is empty. The natural base is essentially empty. The third base is getting low. Here we go. Third base is getting low. I didn't remember which was the third this game. So he's relying on 2 base economy, more or less 2.5 base economy, whereas Maru has so much more money to work with, and he's dropping mules. I'm sure if he's tight, he's actually way oversaturated on this base, but it doesn't matter. In fact, if anything, Maru can probably afford to lose a few SCVs and build some more army units. But yeah, no ghosts, no specialities, no more liberators either. He only built like the 2 an abandoned ship. He's gone full into bio, and this is such a basic way to play, but man, Maru innovation, it's this tier of player that can make these tier of units work in the late game. They're so disproportionately out of location in terms of army and tech, but GG, Maru closes this series with a 3-2 and locks things down. Bravo, Maru. And I'm glad to see we're going to have some more awesome Terran in the DreamHack event, DreamHack Masters.